Thanks for joining us for this episode of Strategic Storytelling.
Jesse and I work together to help people and businesses reach and connect with their communities.
Brian is a visual storyteller, designer, and chief creative officer at Pathfinder.
Jesse is very passionate about entrepreneurship. He's a very loyal person, and he is a very caring individual as well.
In marketing, the storytelling leans on the strategy, but the strategy needs storytelling to be effective.
Agreed. Welcome to Strategic Storytelling with Brian and Jesse, where we talk about all things marketing. And today we're going to talk about how we should tell stories and how we should tell stories as a business.
Yep.
So let's talk about it.
Let's
get into it, man. Let's get it in.
I thought he was going to ask me all these like really detailed
No.
questions. Just lead me in, but no. Here we are. Just go.
Episode 2. It's a whole different thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you this one.
Okay.
All right. So, what is the best way to tell your story, and your being the business we're
talking
with?
about?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's to me that's a loaded question. It could be written, it could be visual, it could be photo, it could be audio, or it could be all of those things. I think I know when we're sitting down with clients, we sit down with them and ask them, where's your audience?
Right.
Where's your audience? How old is your audience? Other pertinent questions that I'm not really coming up with currently, but
are there other specific things about your audience we should know?
Yeah, exactly.
Put it.
So, and because that's the thing, like they may want to do all the things,
right?
But we're like, we usually come in and like, whoa, let's take a couple steps back. Like, we want to make a ton of videos. Great, all right, cool. But like, that's not where your audience is. Like.
Right.
But your audience is maybe listening to podcasts or is connected via Facebook or through the website. Okay, go. Let's start there. Let's start at those places. And then where the strategy comes in is, Jesse can then kind of figure out like, okay, let's get your base, started up here. And then we can start adding in, more graphic design elements, more video elements into those things. Right. So the best way to tell your story to me is it changes with every client that we talk to. We make sure that, we all work hard from our money. So we want to make sure we're utilizing those funds from our clients in the best way possible. Yeah. And that's through lots of questions, but mindful questions about how to start that. So did I start? Did I answer it right?
Yeah. No, it's all wrong. No, that's good. Well, I think it's gotten more challenging, I think, to figure out which medium to utilize because like you can just say we're going to do it through social media, but like, okay, we're talking Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Snapchat,
and that's the thing. Like, there's so many choices within all of those things too. Right?
Well, they all work differently. Yep. They're all different platforms. I think it's really hard for people to really kind of wrap their head around that, especially as we are kind of moving into maybe what I would call like the second phase of social media, where social media has been kind of around for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And it's not like there's these tons of new platforms, but there's just new use cases. And so, people that of maybe a little older generation, they're like all on Facebook now, and they understand that. And it took them a little while, but they're there. They get it. They use it every day. And then they're like, wait a second, why is everyone on this Instagram thing? This is too confusing for me. Right. I can't handle this. And so I think it's just a matter of really thinking about where your audience is and recognizing too, strategy again, that shifts and pivots over time. I mean, it can pivot almost overnight. I think Twitter is such a great example of that this year. Not saying whether we use it or don't use it as a whole here, but it's certainly made us question some things this year as it's kind of changed ownership and moved to being called X, and the way that it's utilized even is different in some ways, and the audience is changing. And it might come out on top with a really great, niche audience, and certain businesses could do really well there. But we just don't really know that right now. No. What worked 2 years ago on Twitter is not where we're at anymore. So I think just recognizing those changes as they occur is really important. Unfortunately, it's very hard for people and confusing for people too. Like, as if we told them 2 years ago, well, you got to be on Twitter. And now we're like, don't go to Twitter. They're going to be like, well, what the
But you told me like 2 years ago that I should be on Twitter. Like,
and,
well, yeah, it's.
And the pace is just changing so much too. It's the pace is so fast. It's just, I mean, Instagram was, before it was purchased by Meta now that owns Facebook as well, you know, it was like a cool new thing. It was like a hip new thing. Like there were quite a few people using it, but it wasn't near the business powerhouse, advertising powerhouse that it is now.
Right.
And so at the time, it was not as useful. If you just, again, last episode we talked about, like, if you have a limited budget, telling your story on everything is not the way because you have a limited budget. You know, you got millions of dollars to spend. Great. We'll tell your story everywhere and we'll sing it from the rooftops. But until then, you got to place those dollars appropriately.
Right.
And so I think the best way to tell your story, like you said, the platform matters and the medium matters depending on the audience.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point. And kind of knowing what your budget, like asking yourself, like, how much do I really want to spend on this? And then kind of zoning in on that. So, because don't start, like, we love it when clients are excited and they're like, oh, I want to do this. 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 Great. And they're like, what's your budget? And they tell us their budget. And like, we're affordable, but we're affordable.
Not that affordable.
Like, that's not going to get all of these things done. We can do this and this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think clients are usually pretty responding to that, and they're like, okay, why? And because the clients we work with, they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So we're there to guide them through that process and make sure that they understand. Here's where your dollars are going to be spent, and here's how we can most efficiently spend them. Because, I mean, yeah, we can spend all your money, but like we want to have results.
Like, do it in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. So
that you're not like upset later.
Yeah. So
well, it's really hard too when people get like their heart set on something.
Yes.
We've had a few come through that they have this vision in their head of this. You know, maybe it's a video series, or maybe it's some of them have asked about doing a podcast even. And then you're like, okay, well, like, what kind of business are you in? And then you're like,
right.
I'm not sure.
I want to do a daily podcast. And you're like, what?
We've had some people that's like, well, I have to go out every week. And I'm like, can you come up with 8 topics? So 2 months worth right now. Crickets.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're going to talk about marketing.
Yeah. So it's
great. It's eight versions of that. And then, 100 more.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, like, I think a lot of times we're there to be a partner in that thought process and in that reflection, because they think about the end result. They're like, oh, I want to have 52 podcasts for a year. And they're like, that's one. You're like, okay, that's one a week. Do you have 52 topics to talk about? Do you even have the first 20?
Yeah. Well, and then 2, if you do, great.
Yeah.
You also have to come in and do that.
Yes.
Do editing.
You're like, oh wait, but you're like, if you're like, oh, I'm too busy doing the business, it's like, well, then you don't have enough time.
Got a few of those too.
Yeah, and we understand that. So it's like
we're not mad about that. It's just you need to set some expectations here appropriately.
It's setting the expectations. It's making sure they understand the time that they have to put into it too.
Well, I think the opposite is the same thought here, but just opposite side of that coin too. I think we say it to people sometimes. Or they say it to us rather, like, it's not you guys, your proposal looked great. I definitely want to do that. I don't have time right now. And we're kind of, obviously as a business, we want you to be a client. We want your revenue. Sure. Right. Biased opinion.
That's how businesses work.
But that said, if you're not telling your story anywhere, if you're just doing zero and if you're telling yourself the story of I'm too busy for that, well, you might have another problem coming in a few months when sales dry up, when economy is not necessarily as good, when the plethora of business you have now is just not around anymore. Well, and so I think it's or you become irrelevant.
Yeah,
unfortunately, which can happen not really based on the service you provide sometimes, but just on the people forgot who you are. You were so busy doing the work that no one saw you at any event, and no one remembers you. And that's a little harsh. They may remember you, but they don't think of you.
But yeah, when they're thinking of a problem that you could have solved for them, they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about the other person that they met at the other meeting, and
who might not be as good as you.
Yeah,
but they were top of mind.
Yes,
and that's we as business owners absolutely respect and understand that problem, because we run into that too. Like, where does it stop? Where does it end? I have kids at home. I can't go to everything.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're really trying to build something here, you need to make some strategic decisions on how you're going to handle that. And the I'm going to do nothing for 6 months thing is not strategic at all.
No.
It's an emotional decision.
This is true. So moving from the best way to tell our stories, as I think we covered a lot of that. And then let's move into how should businesses tell stories. And to kind of preface this, there are a few types of businesses, but the main ones are business to business and business to customer.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about both of those first. That's I think business to customer is the most
consumer.
A
little different.
Good. Business to consumer is the most common. Would you say?
I would not say that.
Okay.
I'd say that they're the ones we see most often.
Well, I guess that's the most people are familiar with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we all of us, no matter who you are buying from a B2C business to consumer company.
I guess that's
whereas
what I was trying
business
to
business, Pathfinder, for instance, we're not really like hugely well known to the everyday person who doesn't run a business or an organization,
right?
Because why would they need to know us,
right?
We're not. That's not our market. We are very well known in the business community locally because that's
we work with a lot of businesses. Yes.
We're at events. We're often filming those events or taking photos or whatever.
Right.
But that's where we should be. So how should businesses tell stories? It depends on which of these buckets you're in, I think, right? Because you're speaking to two. I think there's tons of sub audiences. Like, if I'm business to business, but I only serve a certain industry or offer a certain kind of thing, right? Your audience is somewhat narrowed. Or in our case, it's organizations that need marketing, which is most of them.
Yeah.
Whereas in business to consumer, it's like literally any point to a person and you can sell to them technically. Right now, there are some niches in there. Like if I sell, I'll just pick on my own preferences. If I sell Zelda products, because I love Zelda games, right?
Right.
There's only you're only really selling to people that like Zelda games. You're not selling to everyone. But if you're a restaurant, your audience is pretty much anyone. If you're
that likes food,
if you're an Italian restaurant, and maybe somebody just really doesn't like Italian or something, I guess you cut out that very narrow group of people. But otherwise, you can sell to anybody. That's I think that's what McDonald's was built on, right? It was like they kind of have something for everybody, right? And at the time too, it was a new way of providing that, so they were able to grow very quickly. I think that's a good example of how you should tell your story in that marketplace, right? So McDonald's was never about the best of the best quality, the best beef, the best chicken or whatever. It was hot and fast. It was hot and fast and cheap.
And cheap. Yeah.
It was, you're in and out, and it's good for what it is, but it's about convenience.
Yes.
They're selling convenience. And I think that's really stuck with them all the way. I mean, they're in every town, on every corner.
Right.
Exaggerating a little bit.
Going back to the Italian restaurant, they're maybe selling an experience, and elegance, and
which comes at a higher price point, and
yes,
maybe you're being waited on, and maybe the waiter is suggesting specials, and maybe it's candlelit.
Yeah, candlelit. Take your pick. And there's a wine pairing. So it's also on that business, and McDonald's had that expectation, and then the Italian restaurant has that expectation, but it's on them to create that that experience for their customers.
I think the word experience is kind of interchangeable with storytelling, right?
Yes.
So this nice Italian restaurant we've dreamed up
yes.
is providing the experience and the story of date night, of a special business meeting for a meal,
holiday
party, a family coming together over, an hour long, maybe appetizers and then food and dessert and some wine pairing, whatever. So it's like this experience, and it's a thing you go sit down for.
You're there for a few hours.
McDonald's is telling a very different story.
Yeah.
Billions and billions served.
Yep.
They literally still have that on all their signs. They used to count before it was billions and billions. They used to actually have the count on those signs. And I think that actually says a lot about the story they're trying to tell, even though it's so simple. They're saying how many burgers they sold, right? And it was this number, and they were trying to get that number to be as high as possible. And that should very much tell you it's not about quality.
Yeah.
It's about convenience. It's about speed, right? Because just based on that alone, they're telling you, like, we're trying to get as many of these out as we can. And so there's these little ways like that, I think, is such a good example of telling your story without it being this long written, McDonald's started in the year X and it was, started by so-and-so because of whatever.
Right.
It's just one little line, and then it still tells something about that brand. Whereas the Italian restaurant, maybe they have a fine Italian name that we can all barely pronounce, and their prices are going to be higher, obviously. And you'd better get quality out of that.
Yeah.
Or you're not, if I'm spending $50 on a plate or something or a meal, it better be worth $50.
Right. Exactly.
If I'm spending $1 on a cheeseburger, I'll still probably be back next week,
Right. Exactly. So do you feel that storytelling between B2B businesses and B2C businesses are similar, are different?
Yeah. So the difference, I think, to jump to B2B real quick, is B2B, like, they're not telling a loud story that hits everybody. But sometimes businesses do both too. Yeah. And maybe that'll be a good example, like Apple products, right? They go to businesses, they go to consumers. They're different. They're different things. They're different marketing. I remember when Apple released the iPod, and you saw every walk of life with those headphones dangling in all their advertising. It eventually became just like shadows of different kinds of people, sizes of people, looks of people, the shadows of the people, and the white little earbuds, right? And it was we're making all the colors, and it was a product for everyone. And that's not how they do marketing for their high end Mac Studio computer, right?
Not at all.
That marketing is very targeted with specific features and functions, and it almost sells itself in that way to businesses that need that kind of power. They do long form product announcement videos or events, right? And they walk through every detail of how that thing was made. And that's not for your average Joe who just wants to listen to his music or make his calls on his iPhone. That is for, I want to understand as a business how this is going to actually improve my business. They'll do all those little metrics about, compared to the previous chip that we had, this is
400% more,
whatever. And some of those numbers are, if you really look at them, not as great as they first appear, but they market them in a way that's not lying, but it really says to you as a business, this is going to improve my business.
Right.
And I guess at the end of the day, how we tell our story for both groups is about how we improve our lives, but how we improve our lives in those two places of life, work life and real life, are very different.
Oh yeah.
We're very different goals.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah. So that brings us then to where should we be telling our stories? We talked a little bit about platforms and audience at the beginning of this, so let's kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So when I think I think it starts with audience, right? Because the audience dictates the platform.
Yeah. If you don't know who your audience is, then you don't know the voice, you don't know who you're selling to. It's very muddy, very fast.
If I'm advertising to, I'll just pick on a couple age groups here. if I'm advertising to people that are 90 and above,
Sure.
for certainly, senior living facility, for instance, whatever. Actually, a lot of those people are on Facebook now, but they're not really as much on Instagram, so it's not as important, right?
You're not going to do a TikTok for them.
But, and this is actually a client we're dealing with right now. One of the things that's interesting about that, so it's senior living kind of services.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, well, you got to really hit those seniors on Facebook or through some physical means, even some flyers and things like that. But they're kids who are 40s or something like that, 50s.
So like, where are they
like,
at?
I need to put mom in a place where she's going to be taken care of. I need to get mom involved in some activities. She's home every day. Like, we have to hit those people too. And so the way we target those two different people groups for the same end result have to be different platforms and have to be different messages. For the kids of those parents, we're speaking more to the emotion of it.
Yes.
You need your parent to be taken care of. You need your parent to enjoy some of the last years of their life. You need them to be involved so that they don't just kind of shut down. If we're going directly to the parents, it's, hey, don't you need help? Hey, don't you want to hang out with some people that are like you?
Right.
So the messaging, it's the same, but it's different. It's different target. It's different way we're saying it. And then, additionally, again, on where, if we're talking about, and this is a really challenging one, somewhat for legal reasons and somewhat for just really how you're selling to them. But if you're selling to kids, toys,
right,
for instance, right, what platforms are they on? Well, I can tell you with two little kids in my house that man, YouTube, they got this nailed down. They've got these commercials that pop up, I swear, every 3 minutes on these kid videos. And it's just like exciting toys, like games, and there's kids everywhere. And it's just they're wild. They're hitting them constantly.
I mean,
and they don't have the money or the driver's license to go buy it, right?
Right.
So they're like,
Mom, Dad,
we're gonna get the kid to say something to you, right? Whatever. And if you don't skip the ads, by the way, they will go on for like 90 seconds.
Oh yeah,
some of them.
Yeah,
and it's just crazy.
Well, going back to our youth, watching our favorite cartoon or favorite show, like
Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, that was it. Like all the commercials in between were just like
the episode itself, even though it was slated for like an hour, was only like 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And then it'd be every single kind of toy you could imagine in that hour.
But it just speaks to like, so number one, platform. Right. So there are lots of kids videos. So they run the toy ads during those. Way smarter. I don't remember the last time I saw a toy ad on Facebook.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because the kids aren't on Facebook.
Not on Facebook, no.
But I think the other thing too is, they know that kids can't spend that money. So they have to entice the kid to ask mom and dad, or it has to be an activity in which mom and dad are seeing the toy and they want to buy it for the kid. So that's way smarter than other places. So I think that applies to anything, but really picking where you're placing those ads and how you're targeting those ads, the where is the most important. Another example, just quickly, is I'll pick on a school I used to work with, a small private school, and they were running ads themselves, and they're like, we're not getting any traction. We spent a couple $100 a month, and we're just getting nothing out of this. And so I'm looking at it. I'm like, you guys didn't set your location. It's going to your audience, your 30 somethings that have kids this age. It's going everywhere, and you're a private school in one location. People aren't driving an hour or more to drop their kid off. So people are seeing your ad, they're clicking it. Maybe they're even excited about your school until they discover, well, that's in another state.
Yeah.
This is some years ago now when Google didn't guide you through that as well. But that's the kind of thing that happens, though. And it's a ridiculous example, right? So it's just very expansive in nature, but you really have to think about down to the details of where is my audience and how's my audience thinking?
Right.
Because it's not always what you think they're thinking.
Right. I was just going to say, that small detail is important because you spend a ton of money to
there.
You spend a ton of money to not really get a whole bunch of traction from that. And then it really is about those tiny details and figuring those things out. Is there anything else we would like to kind of dive into on how we should tell our stories? In any,
I don't think so. Things? I think when you ask, maybe to wrap it up, is just when you're asking where to tell your story, it's a much larger question than I think that question first sounds. I think it's really easy for local type businesses to think, obviously, I'm just marketing locally. I mean, a lot of them fall into the trap of buying the couple $1,000 billboard or something like that. There's other examples. But that doesn't mean it's hitting your audience in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to really get in the mind of the person that this is supposed to be for, even if they're not the buyer. And how do we get to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. That you need to reflect on the customers you want to attract.
Yep.
And thank you for joining us on Strategic Storytelling.
Subscribe to our podcast to get more information like this and learn more about marketing for your own business.
Thanks for listening to Strategic Storytelling, a Pathfinder podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow our socials. For more information, visit our website, yourpathfinder.io.